The morning fog curled low over the old graveyard, wrapping the marble stones in a blanket of silver mist. A single figure stood there, still, composed, and achingly alone. Ethan Hayes, a man no older than 32, pressed a trembling hand against the cold stone that bore her name, Lily Hayes. His breath clouded in the air as he whispered, "Good morning, love, it's me again." Every day for 5 years, he had come here, rain, snow, or sun. The world had moved on, but he hadn't. Behind him, the city thrived, skyscrapers climbed higher, new lives began, new dreams bloomed. Yet, for Ethan, time was a broken clock that stopped the day she left. He would bring lilies, her favorite flowers, and set them down gently, arranging them with care, as if she could still see the effort in every stem. He owned companies, houses, and more wealth than he ever wanted, but none of it filled the silence that followed her last breath. Sometimes, when the wind brushed through the trees, he'd imagine it was her voice, soft, teasing, alive again for just a moment. That morning, the air smelled like rain, and the grave looked lonelier than ever. He traced the engraved letters, "Beloved wife, gone too soon," and for a heartbeat, he almost smiled. "Lily," he murmured, "I still can't believe you left before I could say goodbye properly." A drop of rain hit the stone, then another. Soon, the drizzle became steady, and still, he didn't move. His suit clung to him, soaked, but he didn't care. This place was all he had left of her, and somehow, it still felt alive. He remembered her laughter echoing in their kitchen, her messy hair in the mornings, the way she'd dance barefoot on the balcony just to make him smile. The flashbacks weren't cruel, they were what kept him breathing. A woman passing by under a black umbrella slowed her steps. She had seen him before, always standing there, always silent. People whispered that he was the billionaire who couldn't let go. Some pitied him, others admired his loyalty. But no one truly understood that love wasn't something you moved on from, not when it was real. As thunder rolled softly across the clouds, Ethan crouched down, brushing off the rain from the stone. His voice broke when he spoke again. "I promised you I'd make something good of this life, Lily, but without you, I don't know what that means anymore." He stared at the ground, his eyes hollow yet searching for something unseen, a sign, a feeling, maybe even a whisper. But all he found was silence. He stayed until the rain slowed to mist, then finally rose to leave. As he walked back toward his black car parked by the iron gates, a small voice drifted through the air behind him, distant, but real. "Sir, excuse me?" He turned. A little girl stood by the path, no older than 8, holding a single white rose. Her dress was pale, her shoes muddy, her big brown eyes full of quiet curiosity. Ethan frowned slightly, unsure if she was lost. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" She nodded shyly. "You come here every day," she said softly. "You always bring flowers." Ethan smiled faintly. "Yes, I do." The girl tilted her head. "For her?" She pointed toward Lily's grave. "Yes," he said simply. She stepped closer, her tiny fingers gripping the stem of her rose. "She must have been really special." Ethan's throat tightened. "She was everything." The girl looked at him for a long moment, then whispered, "I think she's proud of you." He blinked, not sure why her words hit so deep, but they did. Something about her presence felt strange, familiar, almost comforting. Before he could ask who she was, a gust of wind blew her hair across her face, and when he looked again, she was already walking away, the white rose left at the base of Lily's grave. He turned toward the grave again, staring at the flower resting beside his own bouquet. Something stirred in his chest, confusion, warmth, maybe even hope. The girl had vanished beyond the gates, leaving only her words behind. "Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city, let's see how wide kindness still spreads." That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The child's words echoed in his mind like a forgotten melody. "She's proud of you." Who was she? Why had she said that? The next morning, he decided, for the first time in 5 years, to ask around. He didn't know it yet, but the child had come for a reason, and her secret would soon change everything. The next morning, the rain had cleared, leaving the city washed and glistening under a pale sun. Ethan parked near the same spot by the cemetery gates, his thoughts still tangled in the little girl's voice. He had lived years inside quiet grief, yet one stranger's words had cracked something open in him, a corner of his heart he thought was sealed forever. He walked through the gate slowly, scanning the rows of stones, the winding path, the trees that whispered with the wind. There was no sign of her. Only the faint imprint of small footsteps near Lily's grave, fading into the damp soil. He looked around for a caretaker or visitor but found only an old man trimming hedges. "Excuse me," Ethan asked, "do you know if a little girl comes here often?" "Maybe 8 or 9 years old, brown hair, white dress." The old man paused, thinking. "A girl?" "No, can't say I've seen one," he replied, wiping his brow. "Most folks don't bring kids here." Ethan thanked him, though his mind refused to let go. The girl had felt too real, her voice too warm to be imagination. He knelt by Lily's grave again, tracing the carved letters with his thumb. "She told me you're proud of me," he whispered, a sad smile curving his lips. "You would have liked her, Lily. She had your softness, and those eyes." He stayed longer than usual, caught between disbelief and longing. As he turned to leave, something white fluttered from the flowers, a small folded paper tucked under the rose the child had left. His heart kicked. Carefully, he unfolded it. The handwriting was childish yet neat. It read, "Don't be sad when you visit her. She still sees you. She still listens." Ethan froze, staring at the note. His breath caught in his chest, and for a moment, the world blurred around him. It couldn't be coincidence, not after all these years, not after all that silence. He glanced around again, empty paths, swaying trees, distant birdsong. The note trembled in his hand as he folded it carefully and slipped it into his coat pocket. That night, he sat alone in his penthouse apartment, city lights spilling through the windows. His phone buzzed, missed calls from business partners, reminders from assistants, none of which mattered anymore. He poured a glass of whiskey but barely touched it. His gaze lingered on a framed photo of Lily on the shelf, her smile caught mid-laughter, forever 28. "Is this you?" he whispered to the photo, holding the note close. "Are you trying to talk to me?" The hum of the city filled the silence. Then his phone buzzed again, this time, a text from an unknown number. "I saw you again today. She misses you too." Ethan's pulse surged. His first thought was disbelief, the second, fear, and the third, an aching hope. He typed back quickly, "Who is this?" No reply came. He stared at the screen, waiting, but the dots never appeared. He reread the message, feeling something deeper than logic could explain. The next morning, he went back again. He waited near the gate from sunrise to noon, hoping to catch a glimpse of the girl. Nothing. He wandered the graves until he found himself sitting on a nearby bench, exhausted. Then, just as he was about to leave, a soft voice spoke behind him. "You came back." He turned. The little girl stood a few feet away, holding another white rose. She looked up at him with a faint, knowing smile. "You left this note," he said gently, holding it up. She nodded, stepping closer. "I didn't want you to be sad." Ethan crouched to her height. "How do you know her, my wife?" The girl looked down, fidgeting with the rose. "Sometimes people talk to me when they can't talk to others. Maybe she did too." Her answer sent a shiver down his spine. "What do you mean?" She looked up again, eyes deep with something far older than her years. "You'll understand soon." Before he could say another word, she turned and began walking away. Ethan rose, calling after her. "Wait. What's your name?" She stopped at the gate, looking back with a small, mysterious smile. "Grace." Then she was gone again, leaving only the faint scent of roses in the air. Ethan stood frozen, heart pounding. Grace. Lily had always said if they ever had a daughter, she wanted to name her Grace. His knees weakened. He sank back to the bench, staring at the note, the flowers, the memory of her laughter. The next few days blurred into one long ache of anticipation. Ethan returned to the graveyard every morning, his heart pulling him there like a silent compass. He brought the same lilies, stood in the same spot, and waited, but the little girl didn't come. The caretaker still claimed he hadn't seen her, and Ethan began to wonder if grief had finally begun to twist his mind. Yet, every time he touched the folded note in his pocket, he felt the same chill, a reminder that she was real. Grace. The name echoed in his mind, soft and familiar, like a word that had lived in his heart long before it was spoken aloud. By the 5th day, as the sun dipped low, he sat on the old wooden bench beside Lily's grave and whispered into the evening air, "Grace, if you're out there, please, come talk to me again." A light breeze stirred the leaves. Somewhere, a bell chimed from the nearby chapel, its sound stretching across the silent field. And then, faint footsteps behind him. He turned. Grace stood there again, barefoot this time, her white dress brushing against the grass. In her hand, another rose. "You came back," he said softly, relief washing through his chest. She smiled, small and shy. "I told you I would." He exhaled, trying not to overwhelm her. "Grace, I've been thinking about what you said before. About people talking to you. Can you tell me more?" She walked closer, her voice quiet but certain. "Sometimes, when people are really sad, they leave pieces of themselves behind. Feelings, words, love that never got to finish. If you listen closely, you can still hear them." Ethan's throat tightened. "You mean, you can hear Lily?" Grace looked down. "Not hear. More like feel. She's still around you." Her words made the air heavier, almost electric. He wanted to believe her, wanted so badly for it to be true. "How do you know all this, Grace?" She shrugged, looking off toward the sky. "My mom used to say souls never go too far. Maybe that's why I come here." Ethan hesitated. "Where is your mom now?" Grace's expression changed, a flicker of sadness crossing her small face. "She's gone too." His heart twisted. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Grace looked up at him again, her eyes glimmering in the fading light. "You don't have to be. I think she's with your wife. They talk sometimes." Ethan felt the world tilt, his pulse rising. "Grace, how could you know that?" She stepped closer, reached out, and pressed the rose into his hand. "Because she told me to tell you, stop blaming yourself." The words cut through him like glass. His breath caught, his chest tightening with pain. "What did you say?" Grace only smiled, sad, but gentle. "You'll understand soon." Ethan knelt, searching her eyes, desperate now. "Grace, please. Tell me, how do you know about Lily? How do you know what I—" But she took a small step back, shaking her head. "Not yet. It's not time." Then, just like before, she turned and ran, her white dress vanishing through the old gate as the light dimmed behind her. Ethan remained frozen on his knees, her words echoing in his mind. "Stop blaming yourself." He hadn't told anyone about that, about the night Lily died. The accident. The phone call he missed. The guilt that had eaten away at him for years. He sank to the ground beside her grave, clutching the rose, trembling. "How could she know?" he whispered into the dark. The rose slipped from his hand, landing beside the flowers already there, and for a heartbeat, he thought he saw something move in the reflection of the marble stone. A faint shimmer, like light bending into shape. Lily's face, soft, smiling, gone in an instant. Ethan staggered back, gasping. Tears stung his eyes, not from fear, but from the sudden flood of everything he had buried, love, guilt, longing, all rushing out like a storm finally breaking. He sat there until the stars came out, the night wind whispering through the trees like an unseen lullaby. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. Later that night, when Ethan finally drove home, he didn't turn on the lights. The city skyline glowed beyond the window, distant and indifferent. On the table beside his phone lay the two roses, one from the grave, one from the girl, both still impossibly fresh. He reached for his phone, opening the mysterious message again. Still no reply. But just as he set it down, a new notification appeared. From, unknown. She's waiting for you where it all began. Ethan froze. Where it all began. He knew exactly what that meant. Ethan drove through the city streets that night with the windows half open, the wind pushing through his hair like a ghost's hand. The words on the phone screen pulsed in his mind, "She's waiting for you where it all began." He didn't need to think twice. There was only one place those words could mean, the old park near the river, the one where he and Lily first met. The drive felt endless, even though the city lights blurred by like memories he couldn't touch. When he finally turned down the narrow road toward the riverbank, the world had grown quiet. The rain from earlier had left the ground damp, the smell of wet grass heavy in the air. He parked beneath a flickering street lamp and stepped out, his shoes sinking slightly into the mud. Ahead, the park stretched into darkness, the swings creaking faintly in the wind. It was here, years ago, that he had seen her for the first time, sitting alone on a bench, sketching the skyline as the evening light faded. "Hey, you dropped this," he'd said back then, holding out her fallen pencil. She had smiled, wide and shy, and that was it. That moment had written their whole story. Now, the bench was still there, weather-worn and lonely. Ethan approached it slowly, half expecting nothing, half hoping for everything. A white rose rested on the seat. His breath caught. He reached for it, fingers trembling. Beside it lay another folded note, edges damp with dew. He unfolded it carefully. The handwriting, the same as before. "You can't carry her pain forever." She didn't want that. "Sit and listen." He looked around. The park was empty. Only the whisper of the river and the hum of distant traffic. But something inside him shifted, an instinct older than logic. He sat down. The air grew still. The night seemed to hold its breath. And then, faintly, through the rustling leaves, he heard it. Her voice. "Ethan." He froze, every muscle in his body locking. It was soft, barely a whisper, but unmistakably hers. "Lily." His voice cracked. "You're still here, after all this time?" He shut his eyes, tears already burning hot. "I never stopped loving you," he whispered. "I can't." The air shimmered, and he felt it, warmth, like sunlight breaking through his chest. "You were never meant to stop," the voice said gently, "just meant to live while remembering." He bowed his head, shaking. "I should have saved you. If I hadn't stayed late at work that night." "Ethan." The voice grew clearer, calm but firm. "You have to let that go." He opened his eyes, and for an instant, she was there, not a ghost, not a hallucination, but something softer. The faint outline of her face glowed in the air before him, her smile tender, her eyes full of peace. "Lily," he whispered, reaching out, but his hand touched nothing. "You've punished yourself long enough," she said, her voice trembling with love. "It's time." "Time for what?" "To forgive yourself. To see what I left behind." Her form flickered, then faded, leaving behind a faint shimmer of light drifting toward the riverbank. Ethan rose and followed, his heart thundering. The glow led him to a small clearing beneath the willow trees, and there, standing quietly with her hands clasped before her, was Grace. He stopped a few feet away. "Grace, what is this?" She smiled softly, her hair shining silver under the moonlight. "She wanted you to find peace here." He shook his head, overwhelmed. "You keep saying she told you. How can that be?" Grace looked up at him with eyes far too knowing for her age. "Because I'm the message she left." Ethan stared at her, confusion and realization twisting together. "I don't understand." Grace stepped closer, her small voice barely above a whisper. "When people love each other so much that death can't hold it, sometimes love finds another way to speak. I'm not her, but she's part of me." The wind stirred the branches, scattering silver leaves around them. Ethan dropped to his knees, tears spilling freely now. "All these years, I thought I lost her forever." Grace reached out and touched his face, the warmth of her hand startlingly real. "You never lost her, Ethan. You just stopped listening." The world around them seemed to hum with quiet life again. The river, the night, the heartbeat of something eternal. "Now it's your turn. Share one small good thing you did recently. Write it below so others remember that humanity still lives. Your story might light someone's path tonight." Ethan sat there long after Grace had walked away into the mist, the note still trembling in his hand. The guilt that had chained him for years began to feel lighter. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "I'm listening now, Lily." But just as he stood to leave, his phone buzzed again, another message from the unknown number. "She's not done yet. Tomorrow, follow the white roses." The next morning, the world seemed different. The city noise felt distant, muffled beneath a strange calm Ethan hadn't known in years. He woke early, before sunrise, the glow of dawn painting soft gold across his walls. The phone with that final message still lay on his bedside table, the words pulsing in his memory, "Follow the white roses." He stepped outside into the crisp morning air, his breath forming clouds in the cool light. He had no map, no idea where to begin, but something deep within him seemed to know. He drove without music, without distraction, letting instinct guide him. The roads curved like threads being pulled by unseen hands, leading him through the sleeping city until, at the corner of an old bridge, he saw it. A single white rose, lying against the railing. His pulse quickened. He parked and approached slowly, the morning sun breaking through the clouds above. The rose was fresh, dew still glistened on its petals. Beside it, another note waited, folded neatly. "Keep going. She's closer than you think." He swallowed hard, eyes scanning the quiet street ahead. And then he saw it, another rose, farther down the path. Ethan followed. One by one, the roses appeared, on benches, by lampposts, on the railing beside the river, each one leading him farther away from the heart of the city and deeper into its quieter corners. The trail wound past familiar streets, places he and Lily had once walked together. Every turn felt like a memory reborn. He remembered the night they first danced under a streetlight, the argument that turned into laughter, the promise they made to never go to bed angry. Now, each rose whispered that history back to him, layer by layer, like time rewinding to a purer version of love. By the time he reached the edge of the city park, the air had changed. The world was quieter here, softer. At the far end of the path, where sunlight spilled through the trees, stood Grace. Her white dress fluttered in the morning breeze, and she smiled when she saw him, that same warm, knowing smile that made his chest tighten. "You found them," she said. "I had to," Ethan replied, his voice low. "Where is she leading me?" Grace looked at the roses scattered around them. "To the truth." He stepped closer, desperate now. "Grace, please. I've followed every sign. Tell me what this means. Tell me who you really are." She took a deep breath, her small fingers brushing over one of the roses. "You loved her so much you never let her go. But she couldn't rest until you did." Ethan shook his head slowly, emotion flooding his face. "I don't know how." Grace met his gaze. "You already do. You just forgot." She motioned toward the lake nearby, calm, reflecting the sky in liquid gold. "That's where she wants you to go." He followed her to the water's edge, the same spot where he and Lily used to sit on summer evenings. The ripples shone like glass, and the reflection of the trees trembled across the surface. "She said this is where she felt most alive," Grace whispered. "And this is where she wants you to say goodbye." Ethan stared at the lake, heart pounding. "Goodbye?" Grace nodded. "Not forever. Just for peace." He knelt by the shore, the last rose still in his hand. His vision blurred with tears as memories of Lily filled him, her laughter, her eyes, the way she always believed in beauty even in pain. He pressed the rose gently onto the surface of the water, watching it drift away, slow and graceful. "I love you, Lily," he said softly. "I always will. But I'll try to live again." The rose floated farther, spinning slowly in the ripples, and then, for a heartbeat, the water shimmered with light, forming her outline once more, her smile full of pride and peace. Ethan gasped, a sob breaking from his chest, but this time it wasn't from pain. It was release. The light faded, leaving only the quiet reflection of the clouds, and Grace standing nearby, her eyes glistening. "She's free now," she whispered. Ethan turned to her, his voice trembling. "And you?" Grace smiled faintly. "I will be too." He frowned. "What do you mean?" She took a step back toward the light streaming through the trees. "You'll understand soon." And just like that, she began to fade, not vanish, but dissolve into the sunlight, her voice the last thing that lingered. Thank you for remembering her. Ethan fell to his knees, hands shaking, eyes wet. He felt the wind brush against his face like Lily's final touch. For the first time in years, he didn't feel empty. He felt whole. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. He stayed there for hours, watching the rose drift until it disappeared completely. The guilt that had haunted him had melted into something new: gratitude, peace, love that no longer hurt. And as he finally rose and walked back toward the city, the air felt lighter. For the first time, he wasn't walking away from her. He was walking with her memory, finally ready to live again. Days passed, and for the first time in half a decade, Ethan woke without that crushing weight in his chest. The mornings didn't feel empty anymore, they felt possible. He still visited the graveyard, but not out of sorrow. He came with quiet gratitude, leaving not lilies this time, but wildflowers. Lily used to love those, because they grow where they are not supposed to, she once said. Each time he walked away from the cemetery now, the world looked a little brighter. The light touched the leaves differently, people's voices sounded softer, and even the air carried some peace. He wasn't healed, not completely, but something in him had begun to mend. Still, there was one question that lingered: who was Grace really? He had seen her vanish, fade into sunlight as if she were made of memory itself, but part of him couldn't let go of the mystery. One afternoon, driven by that last strand of curiosity, he visited the city records office, quiet halls lined with dust and paper. He asked about a child named Grace. About any girl fitting her description, living near the area where he'd met her. The clerk gave him a sympathetic look after a few searches. "I'm sorry, sir. We haven't had any records of a girl by that name for several years, not since a car accident outside the city." Ethan's stomach dropped. "When?" The man flipped through the folder. 5 years ago. The same year Lily died. Ethan thanked him and left, his thoughts a whirlwind. As he walked out into the cold air, everything started to make sense: the knowing eyes, the impossible words, the warmth that wasn't quite human. Grace hadn't just been a child. She had been a bridge, a messenger carrying pieces of two broken souls who couldn't find peace alone. That night, Ethan drove to the park one last time. The city lights shimmered over the river, and he stood where Grace had faded. The moon hung low, silver and calm, and he whispered into the air, "Thank you." A soft breeze brushed his face in reply. He smiled faintly and turned to leave, his steps slow but steady. The world no longer felt haunted. It felt alive. He started seeing beauty again, in small moments, unnoticed before. A mother holding her child's hand at a crosswalk. Two old friends laughing outside a cafe. A young couple dancing under the rain. Every heartbeat around him seemed like proof that love didn't end, it simply changed form. One evening, as he sat on the balcony of his penthouse, he opened a small wooden box, the one that had remained untouched since Lily's death. Inside were the letters they'd written to each other during their first year of marriage. He unfolded one, her handwriting looping and light. "Promise me," it said, "that if I ever go first, you won't stop living. Love is not meant to be buried with us, it's meant to be shared." He pressed the paper against his chest, his eyes closing as tears fell silently down his cheeks. "I broke that promise for too long," he murmured. "But I'll keep it now, Lily. I'll keep it." A gentle knock sounded on his door. He wiped his face quickly and opened it. It was the building's night janitor, an older man with kind eyes. "Mr. Hayes," he said softly, "someone left this for you downstairs." He handed Ethan a small envelope, white and familiar. There was no address, no stamp, just his name written in that same careful, childlike handwriting. Ethan's breath caught. He closed the door and opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a single sentence written in gold ink. "She forgave you long before you learned to forgive yourself." He sank into the nearest chair, overcome. The city lights flickered through the glass, and for the first time, he felt no fear of the dark. Forgiveness had finally found him. He walked to the balcony again, looking up at the stars, whispering, "Thank you, Grace. Thank you, Lily. For not giving up on me." Somewhere far beyond what eyes could see, he felt them smiling back. Be honest, could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. That night, as Ethan finally drifted to sleep, his dreams were calm, not haunted, not heavy. In them, he stood in a field of white roses, sunlight spilling across his face, and two voices, one soft and familiar, the other light and young, whispered together, "You're free now." The sun rose over the skyline like a quiet promise. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't wake up with the dull ache of loneliness pressing on his chest. Instead, there was stillness, gentle, weightless. He stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching light spill across the city that had once felt like a prison. Everything looked different now. Not because the world had changed, but because he finally had. Forgiveness had loosened something that had chained his heart to sorrow. As the day stretched forward, Ethan found himself driving again, this time, not to the graveyard or the park, but toward a small community center downtown. A month ago, he would have avoided such places, but now, he felt drawn to them. He walked inside, greeted by the sound of laughter, children drawing, volunteers chatting, a few elderly women arranging food trays. The center's director, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes, approached him. "Can I help you, sir?" Ethan smiled faintly. "I'm actually hoping I can help you." He spent the afternoon quietly working beside strangers, helping paint walls, stack supplies, deliver groceries to the nearby shelter. Each smile he received in return stitched something new into his heart. It wasn't grand, it wasn't dramatic, but it was healing. Later, as the sun began to dip, he sat on the curb outside the center, wiping paint from his hands. A small girl walked by with her mother, same age as Grace had been. She waved, shyly. Ethan smiled back, his chest warming. "Hi there." The girl giggled. "Hi. Are you helping too?" "I'm trying to," he said softly. She grinned. "Good. Mom says helping people makes angels happy." Her words hit him like a quiet echo. He watched her skip away, her mother's hand guiding her, and whispered, "I think she's right." When he returned home that evening, he stood before Lily's photograph again, the same one he had once spoken to in tears. But now, his voice was calm. "I think I finally understand what you meant," he said. "Love doesn't stop when life does. It just changes who it touches." He turned on his phone one last time, scrolling through old photos of them together, vacations, birthdays, small moments they used to take for granted. Every smile in those pictures used to feel like a knife. Tonight, it felt like warmth. He opened the final unread message in his inbox, one that had been buried under months of spam, sent from Lily's old account years ago. It was short, written days before the accident. "If something ever happens to me, promise you'll find joy again. Promise you'll keep helping people, the way you helped me. That's how I'll know you still love me." His vision blurred as tears filled his eyes, but this time, they weren't from pain. He whispered, "I promise." Outside, thunder rolled faintly in the distance, the last echo of a fading storm. He walked to the balcony, letting the cool night air wash over him. The city glowed below, alive and breathing. He could almost hear her laughter in the wind, soft and fleeting, blending with the rustle of leaves. "Good night, Lily," he said quietly. A single white feather drifted past him, landing at his feet. He bent down, picking it up carefully, smiling through the tears. "If you believe love still wins, comment amen." Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. Weeks later, the community center invited Ethan to speak at a fundraiser. He didn't talk about wealth or success. He told them about Lily, about love that outlasted death, and about forgiveness that brings life back to the living. When he finished, the room was silent, not empty, but full. Dozens of people wiping their eyes, some smiling, some whispering thank you. Afterward, as he stood by the door shaking hands, a little boy ran up to him with a rose clutched in his fist, white, delicate, and trembling. "This is for you, mister," he said. "My mom says this means love." Ethan crouched, taking it gently. "You're right," he said, voice low. "It means love, and remembering." He looked at the rose in his hand, its petals glowing under the soft lights, and felt Lily's presence once more, not haunting, but guiding. The story wasn't about loss anymore. It was about what comes after. The next morning broke in soft gold and quiet wind. Ethan stood on the same balcony where he had once whispered his grief into the sky, but this time, his heart was steady. The world below shimmered with movement, people hurrying to work, children laughing, the rhythm of life pulsing again. He looked down at the white rose the little boy had given him the night before, now resting in a vase by the window. It felt symbolic, like Lily's final message, carried through a stranger's small act of kindness. Love had come full circle. He dressed simply, no expensive suits, no polished image, and drove toward the hill overlooking the city. The same hill where he and Lily had once sat after buying their first home, dreaming aloud about the future. The same hill where he had promised her he'd make her proud. As he reached the top, the wind tugged at his shirt, the air sweet with spring. He sat on the grass, hands folded loosely, and for a moment, just listened. Birds chattered, leaves whispered, and somewhere deep within that sound, he thought he heard her again, faint, but there. "You kept your promise," the voice seemed to say. Ethan smiled softly. "I did my best." He closed his eyes, letting the memories flow, their laughter, their fights, their silent nights watching city lights. Every moment was a thread in the tapestry of his life, and though she was gone, the pattern was still beautiful. He took out a small notebook, the one he had begun writing in again after years of silence. On the first page, he wrote a single line. "For Lily, for teaching me that love isn't meant to be mourned, but lived." He tore the page out, folded it neatly, and placed it under the white rose he'd brought with him. Then he sat back, breathing deeply, feeling peace replace every shard of pain that had once ruled him. As clouds drifted above, a group of children's laughter echoed from the nearby park, carefree, pure. It reminded him of Grace, of her mysterious eyes and the way she had carried both sorrow and light. He still didn't know exactly who or what she had been, but maybe that didn't matter anymore. She had appeared when he needed her most, an angel, a soul, or just a reflection of his love made real. He whispered, "Thank you, Grace, for helping me find my way home." A single feather floated past again, spinning slowly before landing near the rose. He smiled through a tear, whispering, "You never really left, did you?" The sky brightened, the clouds parting to let sunlight spill across the hill, painting everything in warmth. He stood and looked toward the horizon, his expression soft but certain. "It's time," he murmured, "to live the life you wanted me to." With that, he turned and walked back toward his car, but this time, he didn't look back. He didn't need to. The peace he'd been chasing for 5 years now walked beside him. That evening, back in his apartment, Ethan started something new, a foundation in Lily's name, one that would support children without families, those who had lost too soon. The logo was simple, a white rose and a feather. He wrote the mission statement himself. "For every heart that's lost someone, may this remind you, love never ends, it only changes its form." And as he signed his name, he felt her hand over his once more, light, fleeting, but real enough to make him close his eyes. If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind. One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." That night, Ethan walked to the balcony one final time. The city stretched below like a sea of stars, and for the first time in years, he didn't speak to the photo on his desk. He spoke to the sky. "Good night, Lily," he whispered. "Thank you for loving me enough to let me go." A soft breeze swept through the open window, carrying the faint scent of roses. He smiled. The white petals on the table trembled once, then stilled, glowing faintly in the moonlight. The storm was over. The love remained.